All right, for our last speaker, before we go off to our reception down in the exhibit hall, is going to be from Andreas Stuhlmuller, our co-founder and CEO of Elicit, and he's going to be talking from literature search to living models, causal reasoning for oncology target nomination.
Hi, nice to be here. I'll specifically talk about how can we use AI not just to find papers and get summary answers, but to very robustly build living causal models in the particular case of oncology target nomination, although a lot of the technologies I'll talk about apply very generally. So what's the issue with target prioritization? I don't think the issue is that there isn't enough data. People have a lot of data. We've heard many talks about how much data there is and how you can get even more data from the literature, your internal data, data about the competitive landscape. You also have the hunches from your team, which is also very important. And so often what I'm hearing is the difficult thing is to track all these different assumptions that need to go into validating. And I think AI can make that better, but it can also make it worse. So I think it can make it better because AI is pretty good at summarizing lots of data. But it can also make it worse because it's relatively easy, at least with the foundation models that exist right now, it's easy to push them around. Something we've been hearing is sometimes people fall a little bit in love and get attached to them. And with current AI models off the shelf, often you can get them to argue for whatever your preferred conclusion is. Can even do that by accident. So that's tricky. What do we do with that? I want to start from here actually with the end of this talk, which is where do I want to get to? And so I want to get to a decision artifact. I want to get to a place where we can say, look, if we evaluate a particular target and we want to think about should we nominate or not, we want to get to something like this, which is not just an AI writing up what does the literature say about this thing, but something that can actually tell you how you're going to make a decision. Should it be a go or no-go decision? In this case, it'll be a keep watching decision, and it'll come with a few specific claims about like why you should keep watching it. Why isn't it approved yet? And I won't go into the details here yet, but we can look at that later. And then it'll also come with something that could change your mind, like something that, if it were true, would actually make you want to go ahead with this specific target. Okay, so how do you get to this sort of outcome? You need to both get to the outcome and also believe the process. Like why, if someone just gave you this, you'd be like, why do I trust it? So how do you get there? This is showing the entry page of Elicit. Elicit is the research agent that we're building, walking you through a kind of internal beta here, but we'd be very happy to give you access to it if you reach out to me. And what I typed here is evaluate PLK1 as a particular degrader mechanism for metastatic triple-negative breast cancer, and gave it a little bit more detail. So that's the setup, didn't say more than that. And what happens then? What happens then is Elicit goes off and it builds behind the scenes a causal model, where a causal model means it'll walk through what has to be true for this to be a good target. Many things have to be true, right? It has to be the case that there's like an antigen that can actually get this antibody into the tumor cells. It has to be like specifically present in TNBC. There needs to be, like, once it's in the tumor cell, the linker needs to release the degrader, the payload needs to reach the actual cytosol, and so on. You can literally walk through the mechanics of it, like what has to be true for this to work out. And then further down, towards the end, you're like, the science and biology and chemistry has to work out, but also it has to be the case that this is sufficiently differentiated from other products and drugs in this space. It's not enough that the science is there. And you can already see if you try to list that as natural language, it gets complicated very quickly. This is obviously just a slide, so it's a summary of what is actually the case. And so in Elicit, what happens is, and I know you can't read the details here, but what happens is it'll structure that information at runtime as a causal graph. This is not like a pre-built knowledge graph that we've built ahead of time. It's like you type your query, and behind the scenes, we construct how the different assumptions and links in the causal chain that I showed you have to relate to each other. So if I zoom in on the top left of this graph, it'll start by talking about the very beginning of that causal chain. You have to choose a particular antigen. That antigen has to actually bind and then get internalized into the tumor, and then the payload needs to be released, and so on. So you can literally walk through that graph, and you can click on any of these edges. And what's crucial is you have to have confidence in these edges, and you're not going to have the same confidence in each of these edges. So if you click on one of these edges, it'll say, look, these are the papers or other sources of information based on which we believe that this causal link holds or not. So what can you do with that? I think one interesting thing you can do with that is showing that Elicit will also tell you in natural language what the graph means. So you don't just have to look at the graph, but it'll say what has to be true for this target to be a good target. And then the converse of that is, what are the weakest links in this particular causal chain? I think the example I had actually has a few fairly weak links. One of them is like in the biology, where it's actually not clear how selective PLK1 is for triple-negative breast cancer. So that's one of the edges that in the graph, if you looked at it, would be marked as red. The other really interesting thing here is if you make this such a graph, you can then iterate on it interactively. So you can iterate in it by saying, hey, elicit, do more research and integrate the papers you find into the graph. So maybe you pointed to a particular direction that it didn't initially consider, and then it can make fairly pointed changes. It can say, look, we have to update like this edge and maybe this node or add this node. It's not the case that there will be like some global rewrite or everything looks different suddenly. I think that's like really interesting because there are different sources of such updates. Like it could be the user feedback I just described to you. It could be the model itself. And so often you can just tell the model, hey, like just think about it more. For each of the things that you've already researched, do another pass, follow the references, and then give me an update on this graph. So I think that's pretty interesting. Or you could be like, here's some internal data that I have that in fact should tell you that some of the links you thought were weak are not weak. And there are different ways you can visualize that information. I gave you two ways. I showed you the graph and I showed you the kind of natural language summary. You can also put the information in tables. I think that's especially useful when you're trying to discuss the risks that are associated with a target. So saying, look, here's our table that has the prioritized risks that we see with this particular nomination. For each risk, how severe is it? How likely do we think it is to be true? What's the evidence in favor of it? So what papers or other information says that this is a risk? What's the evidence against it? What are the mitigations, if you can see any mitigations at this point? As a decision, what should we do with that? So again, zooming in on one part of this table, here this is the thing I said earlier, which is PLK1 is maybe not actually that selective for a triple-negative breast cancer because I think I'm not a domain expert here, but I think it's involved in mitosis, and mitosis happens in many places in the body in general. And in fact, there is evidence, like this Cunningham study that's referenced here, which says it's universally expressed across many cancers and so on. That's a real risk and an example of the sort of risk you might see in this table. And if you click on it, you'll get the references. So that's generally a thing that's true of everything in Illicit, be it the graph or the freeform text or the table. If you click on it, it'll tell you what is like the literal kind of source text that backs this up. Now, so far I've just talked about the scientific constraints. Obviously, for target nomination, the non-scientific constraints also matter. And I think one interesting thing about putting it all in the same place is you can really see how everything has to come together for this to work out. Because sometimes you get overly focused on one aspect and really is actually not that helpful if, I don't know, your antigen is really nice and works out, if at the end it's just the case that there is a competitive drug that's really good, or if the selectivity isn't good, the chain, I guess, you multiply it on the chain. And if everything is 80%, then once you've multiplied a few of those, you're down to 20%. So in the non-scientific case, Illicit will not just look at the papers, it will also look at clinical trials, press releases, and so on, and will tell you, look, how confident are we that this is actually a differentiated drug? Now we can go back to what we had at the beginning, this sort of decision artifact. I told you a little bit about how that comes to be. This is a decision artifact for the particular example that I showed you, PLK1, in a particular setting. And again, here's Illicit saying, look, I don't think you should proceed with this. I think you should wait 6 to 9 months. There were actually a few reasons behind that particular judgment. One of them was a few other clinical trials were going to finish on that timeline that would inform it. And it'll tell you, here are the top reasons for why you don't want to advance it yet, like for example, the selectivity that I mentioned. And then here's a specific thing that would make you want to advance it earlier. Now, I think that's interesting and useful, but it can be even more useful. And the way it can be even more useful is if it tells you not just wait 6 to 9 months for these other trials to come out, but what experiments should you personally or at your company run to inform that decision. So in this particular case, there is actually an experiment you can run. It's a particular matched assay experiment where you're trying to figure out, can we learn more about the selectivity than is already known by matching up the breast cancer tumor cells with healthy cells and making sure they have the same proliferation rates and seeing, can we selectively target them? And Illicit is going to tell you, depending on the outcome of that experiment, here's what I would recommend, like whether to advance or not, or keep watching. So that's one experiment. It comes from this entire table of experiments that Elicit would have produced for you, but would have told you at the top, this is a particular experiment. For each experiment, it would have said, what's the experiment, what's the design, or it's going to be a sketch. Obviously, if you're actually going to run the experiment, you want to zoom in much more on this. And then what question does it address? How does it inform the decision? And very roughly, what do you think it'll cost? How long will it take? Okay, so that's a quick walkthrough through the entire decision process here. And just to abstract from it, what is it that the agent gives an expert who's thinking about this? It's giving this, I would think of it as like a substrate for judgment, right? It's like telling you, hey, what must be true for this nomination to be a good idea across the entirety of the decision, not zooming in on a particular aspect. What's the evidence for each element that supports it? What's the evidence against it? What assumptions are currently most untested? So that would be in the graph, which edges have weak literature to cite, for example. What experiment can we do to change our state of knowledge here? And even if all of this is true, what's the competitive bar for this to work out? So hopefully that gives a flavor of how you could use these agents to build up fairly robust representations of knowledge that are not a static thing that you can interact with, but that you can iterate on, where you can understand why is it the case that a particular decision was made. You can disagree with it and say, oh, I don't think actually the thing that you, the agent, thought was unknown is unknown. You can update your graph in light of that, and then just tell me again, what are the kind of top uncertainties, what are the experiments with highest expected value of information, and so on. So if that sounds interesting to you, Elicit is both available as a public platform, but we also have a kind of enterprise platform that's used by many of the big pharma companies that you know and love, and it could be used by you too. Just get in touch. Email me at bioit@elicit.com.
Thank you very much. Any questions from the audience? Yes. Would you mind the microphone?
All right, great. Yeah, just a quick question, right? So in terms of literature search, one of the limitations of any LLM model or AI agent is they only have the open source data available or the literature available. And we have a huge body of scientific literature behind the subscription models, right? So how would you account for that limitation?
Yeah, this is something we have thought and addressed in many ways, since literature search is one of Elicit's main use cases. One of the ways in which we address it is by helping people leverage the subscriptions they already have. So we have for example, we have a Chrome extension that basically proxies your access such that Elicit can use it. And we have publisher partnerships that are ongoing and have worked. Yeah, usually we find we can figure out solutions for this.
All right, thank you. Thank you.
I'll just ask a quick question. So as far as Elicit, it looks like it goes down to the rabbit hole of what experiment it suggests, but does it also look at market data, like this target, how many patient or rare diseases it looks for? Have you looked into that? And I have a second part of the question if I have time.
Sorry, can you repeat the first part again?
First part is, does it look at market data on how many patients may be impacted and what that may looks like in terms of dollars spent by the company or how much value it get for the company?
Yeah, it does look at that. It does. We do have many people who are using Elicit for that, and I think the details depend on what data exactly do you want to have access to, do you need, but it's a very flexible system. It's easy to connect additional APIs and connectors to it. And yeah, so part of the promise of Elicit is we do want to connect all these different considerations. There are many tools that are more in the weeds and are okay, I'm going to help you analyze your protein data. Elicit is never going to be that. But I think Elicit is quite good at, if you say, here's the data that I want to have integrated, being okay, let me put it together in an overall framework that makes sense, and then think through which of these considerations are robust or not robust. And then in any particular case, often people are bring their own data.
So very interesting tool, especially interesting to see that you can identify weak evidence and recommend new experiments for stronger evidence. My question is it specifically pre-trained on biology, or is it easily translatable to other life sciences like physics or mathematics?
So it is built for biology, so it will work best for biology, but that is not a function of pre-training for the most part. It's a function of us having iterated with users in biology and knowing, okay, here are the failure modes, how can we address them? I think it will actually work okay for many other domains as well, but I would be less confident in making guarantees. But there's nothing in principle that's preventing it. But I guess there are small things like, I don't know, clinicaltrials.gov probably doesn't matter if you're trying to write a mathematics paper. So there's some auxiliary tooling that probably works better in bio.
Thank you.
We have a last question.
First of all, thank you. Really cool talk. How deterministic do you find it to be in the real world? If I prompt it 3 times exactly the same way, will I get the same graph?
You get... Yeah, that's a great question, and also something we've thought about a lot. We have a part of the product that is extremely deterministic, which is the kind of systematic literature review flow, where if the agent decides, okay, I want to go through like a search, screening, data extraction flow, that it basically is, okay, what's the Prisma compliant thing to do? How do we do it in a way such that, in fact, if we ran the same thing again, we would get it again? Sometimes when people care about it being especially repeatable, they can tell the agent, hey, only use like keyword search, don't even use semantic search. So it's possible. I think you wouldn't get the same graph literally. Part of it, there's some small, almost like random thing. The graph layout algorithm is probably going to jumble things up slightly. And I think there are probably some steps at the end where there are like small variations. Do you decide to cluster 2 nodes or not? I would be very excited in like thinking about like how can you make that more deterministic too. I think it's not been the part that people cared most about making it deterministic. We found it's more about when people are like, as part of this exploration, we had to do the systematic literature review, and we want to point to this component as being deterministic. That has been more important, whereas for the kind of visualization of what's our belief state, I think my experience has been people are more like, I don't know, I use it like similar to how I use other AI tools where I don't actually care that much about this particular point being exactly the same as last time.
Thank you very much. And a last round of applause for all.